Welcome to the Business of Beauty, where we help beauty entrepreneurs in building their business and reaching their dreams. This is your host, David Lee. Our guest today is a little different than our typical beauty entrepreneur. Our guest today works with leaders who feel overworked and exhausted to find that sense of peace and freedom they desire. And as a result, they learn how to deepen their spiritual connection and implement key tools so that they can experience more free time, efficiency, and prosperity. She is proud that she has helped hundreds of professionals around the US and beyond to find what uniquely works to manage their stress. And also being featured in the media outlets such as Parade, Fox 29, Good Day Philadelphia, the Maui News, and Holy Magazine. And her superpower is going beyond mainstream stress management tactics and techniques to help professionals figure out what uniquely works for them to manage stress. I'd like to say welcome to the show, Carlee Myers at the Stress Less Company.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, welcome. Yeah. So really excited. So especially in these crazy times, right? A lot of people are sure pretty stressed out. You know, it's not like running a business isn't stressful enough, right? You throw another factor in there.
Yeah.
So I guess before we dive into all the technical and the cool stuff about how to be stress-free in life and you know, especially as a business owner and a beauty entrepreneur, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and your business and everything about that?
Yeah. So I think you covered the bigger cliff notes about me when you introduced me. However, I will share that how I got into, owning the Stress Less Company. And the Cliff Notes version of that is that, when I was a kid, I experienced a really traumatic event where my mom was viciously attacked by an ex-boyfriend. And as a result of that evening, her new boyfriend was actually murdered and she was shot 3 times.
Whoa.
And while, she wasn't supposed to survive, she did. And I tell you this because, well, 1, if you saw her today, you would have no idea. But 2, as a result of this event, I ended up struggling for a long time. I struggled with the symptoms of PTSD, with stress, with overwhelm, you name it, I was probably struggling with it.
Mm-hmm.
And it took me about 10 years of struggle to finally figure out what worked for me to manage stress. And I realized that there is no one size fits all. As much as we want 5 or so mainstream approaches, right? Therapy, meditation, yoga, changing our diet, exercising. We've all heard them.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just not enough. And so as a result of that journey, I really ended up creating the Stress Less Company to help each individual figure out what uniquely works for them, and the Stress Less method, which helps us really move through that process with so much more ease.
Nice.
Yeah.
So I guess can you tell us a little bit more about like the program and what are some of the results? I mean, obviously, they're less stressful, but are there any other benefits of that?
Yeah. Well, goodness gracious. Well, we have to start with how stress impacts us. Right. So stress, when we are experiencing stress, I'm the first one to notice. And I think many of us are the first one to raise our hands when, we're in a room and people say, "Hey, are you stressed?" I think everyone's hand probably is raised, but we're not acknowledging how stress is actually impacting us. So it can show up with headaches, insomnia, depression, anxiety, social withdrawal, irritability. And that's not even getting into the scary stuff that we hear about all the time, right? Like cardiovascular disease, heart attack, strokes. And so when we work on our stress, not only are we finding more peace and more freedom, we're also finding health, physical health in our bodies. We're improving our mental health. And as a result, we are making more money. We're being more productive. We are kicking butt in our businesses because we're not running on empty.
Yeah. And I love that. And I'm curious if you've met other entrepreneurs, kind of like similar to myself, where sometimes I'm like just so stubborn. I'm like, stress, what is that? I don't believe in that. Well, this is the old me, right? And I'm like, stress, there's no such thing. And I was just like in denial until like there were times where it was tough to sleep at night and just not getting a good night's sleep and all these other effects. And I ultimately came to the conclusion, and I tried changing my diet. I tried all these other things, and finally realized, you know what? I think it's just stress. Maybe I should just chill out and not stress out so much. And that almost instantaneously kind of changed, you know, my overall health. I know this sounds crazy, and sometimes it sounds, when I tell people this, they're like, hey, is this some kind of voodoo magic? Like, what are you trying to like pitch me? I'm like, I'm not pitching you anything. This is what I just did. I just had the mind shift of myself to do that. But I'm curious, like, so back to like my question would be, are there, you know, how do you really know that you're truly stressed out, or if it's just something else? Or is it like, oh yeah, maybe I just ate something bad yesterday, and maybe that's why it's bothering me, and I just didn't get enough sleep, and you know, it's stress related, or it's not stress related? How do you really figure that out?
Yeah, so you know, unfortunately, we live in a society where we've really, most of us, especially in the US, have been brought up under the belief where, you know, just pick yourself up by the bootstraps, right? We don't have time for emotions. We don't have time for this.
Just suck it up.
Let's get stuff done. Come on.
Yeah.
And I think nothing better shows that example than that viral video of that poor little girl in the tutu dancing at a dance recital and meanwhile crying. I don't know if any of you have seen that, but that is exactly, you know, what we're talking about here. We're saying, I don't have time for this. And, you know, we start out like that little girl, but as we get older, we're not even crying anymore. It's so pushed down that we can't even recognize it. And so, you know, one of the first things that I would recommend, which is a pretty unconventional suggestion, is to do an exercise, right? Go to a mirror in your home, look yourself dead in the eyes, and say something to yourself that is absolutely not nice.
Wow. Okay.
Right? Everyone's like, what? She's not an affirmation, not, you know.
Yeah.
Something that, you know, stresses you out, right? So if, for instance, money stresses you out, you might go to that mirror and you might look yourself dead in the eyes and say, you don't know what you're doing with money.
Yeah. Why are you so broke?
Right? Exactly. Right. And so the point of the exercise is not to beat ourselves up, but the point of the exercise is, it's an experiment. Where am I, like, what shifted in my body when I said that? And that can give you a very clear indicator as to how your body is responding when you're stressed. So for me, when I would say something like that, usually I get a pit in my stomach. I have this lump in my throat. And if it's a really nasty statement, it's, you know, it's behind my eyes that's starting to well up. That's my physiological response to stress. So even if I'm not emotionally, emotionally acknowledging the emotion, I know when I've got a pit in my throat, or a pit in my stomach and a lump in my throat, I'm experiencing a stress response that I'm suppressing. And so that can be a really great exercise. Now it goes both ways, right? With, you know, when we're ignoring our emotions to get stuff done, we don't have time for this. We're also ignoring the celebrations. We're saying we don't have time for them. And so we want to do that same exercise with a positive statement to see how that feels, because it may also be a little uncomfortable. So you may have a little physiological response to that too.
I remember like, you know, just growing up in an Asian or Chinese family, like there's no words of affirmation, right? Like you never do a good job. You're like, hey, why did you get an A-? That's an Asian F. You know? So it's like, so it would be a little different, especially from my perspective. Now, are there different types of stress?
Yes. This is the funny thing, right? Everybody thinks that there's just one type of stress. It's all bad. You know, everyone's going to have a heart attack, you know, that's it. But, you know, there's actually quite a few different types of stress, but I think it's about 4 or 5 actually different types of stress. But all you need to know are 2 key types, right? One is distress. That's all the stuff that we've been talking about to this point. Distress is usually showing up when we feel like we can't handle the situation. We feel like we don't have the resources to rise to the occasion. And, our fight, flight, or freeze response is triggered. We're anxious, we're worried, that.
Yeah.
Now, there's also this stress called eustress, right? EU stress, euphoric kind of stress. Typically, this type of stress is associated with, good things. So getting married, graduating, getting the promotion, having a kid, all of this stuff. Really, really stressful events.
Yeah, but it's a good thing.
Right? But we view it as a good thing.
Yeah.
Now, the difference between these two are actually pretty incredible, because that has really little to do with the event itself, and it has everything to do with the way we're perceiving it. Right? So some people, divorce, that's in eustress. They are very happy about that, right?
Yeah.
Other people, it's in distress. It's all the perspective. But what's really powerful about these two different types of stress is that they actually create a different physiological response in the body. So when we're experiencing distress, our blood vessels actually constrict. So our blood actually is having trouble moving through our bodies. Our oxygen's having trouble getting to our brains. We're having trouble focusing.
Yeah.
And with eustress, we get the complete opposite effect. Our blood vessels actually expand. So the blood's able to move through our bodies. We're able to focus. We're able to rise to the occasion.
Yeah.
And the difference, especially when we're talking about the blood vessels, this is the difference between getting sick and being healthy. This is the difference when you're talking about public speaking, forgetting everything you're going to say or you're supposed to say and remembering and rising to the occasion. You're still going to have the sweaty pits, right? You're still going to get nervous, but your body is serving you. The fight, flight, or freeze response is actually serving you in rising to the occasion versus, hiding or fighting your way out of it.
So it sounds like it's almost like a fight or flight response, right? It's just like, okay, well, there's a cheetah or a bear chasing after you. Some people are like in shock. They're like, okay, I'm not going to move, maybe. And some people are like, okay, I'm going to immediately go somewhere. I mean, depending on the animal, you might not want to move, but so it sounds like that, right? In those situations where if you need to run from something in danger, you need all the oxygen you can get in, right, to your muscles to be able to move quickly.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So is
and
the whole,
oh,
go ahead.
I was going to say, and again, it's all the perspective, right?
Yeah.
And we're not really, the primal response to a bear or a tiger or, whatever is, it serves us, it serves its purpose. Yeah. But when we're talking about running a business, when we're talking about, stressors that they're not going to come rip our heads off. I'm thinking about a bear being like 10 foot tall, but they're not going to do that. It's an email that's coming in. It's a client that's frustrating. It's a very different response. And when we shift our perspective, we're able to rise to the occasion so much better.
Okay. Now, I guess the $1 million question would be, how do you shift your perspective, right? Because the goal is to shift it from the what was the term called? Distress versus eustress. So we want to move it to the eustress, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So how do you change that perspective to eustress?
Well, I think the first thing is to just acknowledge that you have a stressor, that something is stressing you out.
Okay.
And that can be, that can just be sitting down and saying, what's feeling really intense for me right now? What's causing me to feel the need to overwork, especially when we're business owners, right? Overwork, try to fix, call what's causing that? And just starting to write down and acknowledge what those things are. So maybe it's COVID-19, maybe it's all the policy regulations. Goodness gracious, my dad has a hair salon and there's curtains. He has literally shower curtains because they had to figure out the cheapest, the best way, but to set up the new regulations. The regulations, the policy changes, the math that goes along with how many people you can have in a chair at a time, right? But, writing down all of those things. And then once you have them written down, first of all, you're going to be able to acknowledge, oh, wow, I've been carrying a lot and I haven't even realized it. So there's going to be a weight that's lifted off just in acknowledging. Yeah. But then from there, you want to ask yourself, how is this stressor serving me? And that's where you have the opportunity to switch. Yeah. So, in full transparency, I had COVID back in March, and I could have easily, oh my goodness, how easy could it have been to be like, you know what? 2020 is a dumpster fire. I'm done. Social isolation, quarantine, right?
Yeah.
And luckily I had this knowledge already in my tool belt, and I was able to say, you know what? No, we're not going into distress. That is certainly not going to help my health.
Yeah.
Right. We're going to go into eustress. So how is this stressor serving me? And I really sat down and I wrote out how it was serving me. Well, I was going a million miles a minute before this pandemic hit. I was traveling a lot to speak. I was, always on the run.
Yeah.
I didn't even realize that I was treating my body like it was not the temple that it is, right? I was I was grabbing food on the go. I was just right. Yeah. And I was so between going a million miles a minute, not treating my body like I should have, and probably a million other things, this whole situation allowed me to slow down, to start acknowledging my body, and to start evaluating what are my real priorities, because they're all not my priorities. And when I shifted that, I was like, wow, I'm actually, now I wouldn't wish it on anybody, but I'm kind of glad that this happened.
Yeah. It's like with, when life gives you lemons, you make lemonade, right?
Yeah.
But that's amazing. I'm glad you were able to get through it, and, it's a pretty tough time for a lot. And that's also another thing that I've been hearing from a lot of different beauty entrepreneurs too. It's like they're either they're starting their beauty business because of this whole situation. And it started off as a kind of a crappy situation, but then you're like, hey, this is a new opportunity. Now I have time to reflect. But also for the people that are already running a business, current entrepreneurs, they're giving themselves time now, to reflect on their own business. So that reflection piece is crucial. Sometimes it's like, okay, well, if you don't do it, well, your body will let you know. Other forces outside will let you know. And sometimes it might not be the most enjoyable experience, but it's as long as you can make through it, you'll be fine.
And another example of this, just thinking about the pandemic and the beauty and health industry, is I have a good friend who owns a massage studio. It's a chair massage studio. And before the pandemic hit, and that was a big stressor for him, because you talk about money, you talk about you're in a industry where you're hands-on and right, and so that was huge. But for him, he realized before everything happened, he was sitting around in his studio. He had no appointments required. He was walk-ins only. He was sitting around in his studio 8 hours a day waiting for people to show up. Right.
Yeah.
And
not very
sometimes
efficient.
it was a wave of people and he was overwhelmed, and other times he was just twiddling his thumbs.
Yeah.
And the regulations that pissed him off at the beginning. Right. He's like, oh my gosh, I can take days off. I can just close when I want to. I can work when I want to. And it's just based on appointments. And it was mind-boggling for him. And it was what it allowed, if he made that decision to go appointments only without the pandemic, it would have been much more difficult, because his clientele were used to being able to walk in whenever they wanted.
Yeah.
Right. But because of the regulations, he was able to just slide on in, and now he's going to stick with it because it's working.
Yeah. Love it. Yeah. So do you have any other, that's great. You have any other, I know we're going to wrap up in a few minutes. I know you're tight on time today. But do you have any other suggestions, advice for our beauty entrepreneurs? Like what should they be doing? Especially in these crazy times, they're stressed out, just like your friend was, about all these regulations, or maybe, keeping their business going, paying for rent, all that stuff. So what advice would you give them?
Well, definitely trying to switch from distress to eustress as much as possible, writing those out, asking yourself that question, how is it serving you? And if you don't believe it, that's okay. You can write down the facts and make it your mantra until you believe it, right? That's the first thing. The second thing is implementing a little bit of creative stress reduction. So the creative stress reduction is any activity that gets you out of fight, flight, or freeze mode that we were talking about earlier,
Okay.
and into a state of play or flow.
Okay.
And so this can literally be anything. It could be painting, it could be knitting, it could be walking your dog, it could be formatting an Excel spreadsheet if that's what you're into. Right? It doesn't matter. But the key is to get out of fight, flight, or freeze mode, because when we are in that state, we are unable to think clearly. We can't see the whole picture. It's harder to come up with solutions. Yeah. So, if you're in the beauty industry right now and there's a lot of stress, there's a lot that you're dealing with, the first thing I would say is implement that creative stress reduction, get yourself out of fight, flight, or freeze so that you can come back to the challenge at hand with a clear state of mind so that the solutions come to you versus you trying to dig for them.
Love it. Love it. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time today. How can our audience reach you?
Absolutely. So if you feel like you could use a little bit more support, I'm happy to offer you an invitation to chat one-on-one with me for a complimentary stress assessment. It's a 30-minute call where we can first, talk about figure out what's causing you stress, what's causing you overwork, the whole 9 yards, what's causing you to be stressed, where I will hold space for you and I will listen deeply. And together we will figure out why you haven't found the peace and freedom that you desire yet. And that's the key word. And so to apply for that opportunity, you can visit stresslessco.com/apply.
Nice. All right. Well, Carlee, well, thank you so much again. And for everyone, hope you enjoyed this episode. I definitely learned a lot from it, and definitely would try that mirror exercise. Start chewing myself out like, hey, why are you doing this? Right?
Got to do it both ways though.
Yeah. Okay. I'll do both. Well, again, thank you so much. And we'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Hey, Beautypreneurs. I'm David. My team and I created a website kit for fellow entrepreneurs looking to grow their business online, whether it's e-commerce or a service-based business. We've got you covered. This will also help us continue our webcasts and provide valuable knowledge to countless beauty entrepreneurs watching. For more details, check out our website kits at beautybiz.info/website kits. If you like the videos that we make, you can support us by giving this video a thumbs up and subscribing to our channel. Thanks. We'll see you next time.